Hi everyone, I'm Matt from Looking to Bitcoin, and today we're going to be looking at how we can know when the Bitcoin bull run has begun. To do this, we'll be using a number of resources that are all freely available on lookintobitcoin.com, your number one source for Bitcoin information. If you haven't already, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to ensure you're receiving all of our content as soon as it's released. So right now, if you weren't already aware, Bitcoin has had a rather nice few weeks of price action where we've rallied up from our lows that we made at around $16,000 into the $20,000 region again. And if anything, it looks like we've wiped out the previous downwards move we had following the FTX insolvency and the Bitcoin price collapse we had following that. And because of this positive price action, a lot of people are wondering, is this the start of the new Bitcoin bull run? And while it may be a little bit early to say for sure or with 100% confidence that is actually the case, using a number of on-chain metrics, we can actually try and get a better probability and a better general idea ourselves without an unbiased emotional view of whether the bull run may have already begun. So one of the metrics we've discussed quite a lot recently is the price forecast tools here on the Look Into Bitcoin site, and specifically the CVDD, or the cumulative value days destroyed, and the balance price. So if we just isolate those two metrics here, we can see in every Bitcoin bear market, these two lines have actually provided great support for the Bitcoin price at the tail end of a bear market. We've seen in every single Bitcoin cycle, price has actually found support, bottomed and rebounded and commenced the new bull run after reaching these two lines. And this time seems to be no different. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see for a bit more confirmation on the fact, but looking historically, this is a pretty promising indication that if we haven't already found a Bitcoin price bottom and the bull run hasn't already begun, then we maybe are quite close. And worst case, hopefully it's just some sideways chop and consolidation around this region before we actually really do finally kick off the next bull run. Next, we have the realized price, another one of our favorite tools here on lookintobitcoin.com. And the realized price is taking into account the average transactional value of every Bitcoin on the network. So every price at which each Bitcoin was moved on the network, we just can aggregate all of that data and average that down to get an average transactional value of Bitcoin. So if we see right now, this price is sitting at around $19,700, and Bitcoin has actually just recently surpassed this value. And again, similar to the price forecast tool chart, we can see every time Bitcoin has found a price bottom, it's had this sort of long sideways consolidationary period beneath this realized price. When a majority of Bitcoin are currently being held at an unrealized loss, this usually indicates when a majority are losing money on their positions that we're probably in a capitulation phase and probably towards the tail end of a bear market. And again, without getting too excited too early, this seems to be like it could be another good indication that we are potentially entering the early stages of the next bull cycle. Obviously, again, we'll have to wait and see. But once again, if we just isolate the previous few cycles, we can see Bitcoin usually rebounds beneath this realized price line, chops around this realized price, just as a lot of people maybe want to get out of their positions at an even price. But we can see once we actually convincingly break out above this realized price value, we usually have a good upwards reaction in price. And right now we can see we have consolidated around this. So we may have had a few fake signals previously. We may have had opportunities where Bitcoin broke above and people may have thought preemptively that Bitcoin's bull market had already begun. So again, we have to remain cautious and work on probabilities here and say that just because we have it isn't a necessarily certain fact that we have begun a new bull cycle, but it is just one of the other tools we can use as confluence to give us a little bit more confidence that maybe that is the case. And finally, we have the MVRV score, another one of our favorites. And this is again taking into account the realized cap, which is just the realized price we looked at previously, but just multiplying by the circulating supply of Bitcoin. And then the market cap, which is the current Bitcoin price, multiplied by the circulating supply of Bitcoin, and then divided by the standard deviation, which is just the volatility of the price. And we can see the MVRV score has really accurately provided buy and sell signals throughout all of Bitcoin's price history. And we can see again, in every single one of Bitcoin's cycles, Bitcoin really found a bottom as it consolidated within this green buy area of the MVRV score. And it seems that this cycle is no different. However, we haven't actually broken out of this green buy zone yet. We did previously, but again, we have had some false signals, maybe some fake breakouts to the upside before more downwards price action. And right now, we really sit on the cusp of potentially breaking out of this buy area. So again, this is another good indication that we may be close to kicking off a new bull cycle, but we have to take into account that the recent very exponential price move to the upside may result in Bitcoin maybe having a bit of a breather in upwards price action. There's nothing wrong with that, especially given the fact that we have moved up quite substantially in the past few weeks and months. So if Bitcoin were to sideways consolidate a little bit, just have a little bit of a breather, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. If anything, this would be a good sign. As long as Bitcoin isn't collapsing in price once more, it indicates that there aren't too many sellers, there aren't too many people willing to take profit at this area. So a little bit of consolidation before our next move up could even be healthy for Bitcoin. So ultimately, taking all of this into account, has Bitcoin begun its new bull cycle? Realistically, we can't know for certain, of course. In hindsight, it'll be very obvious. Looking at all of the metrics we have here on lookintobitcoin.com, we only covered a few here today, but a number of them are starting to begin flashing signs that we may be entering a new bull cycle. But realistically, it's one of these things that until we actually know for a fact, after the bull run has really truly kicked off, we can't know for certain. We can only work in probabilities and take our best educated guess. So just to summarize, when undertaking our market analysis, we should work in probabilities as opposed to absolutes. In hindsight, things always seem much more obvious, and in hindsight, I'm sure this bull cycle kicking off will be very obvious to everyone. However, right now, things are still a little unclear, especially given Bitcoin's more volatile price action in the past few months. It may just be a case of having to wait and see and try and increase our chances of making the correct decision with our investing. But when we take into account a number of market cycle and on-chain metrics, we can be more confident that a confirmed shift in market conditions has taken place. However, we need to account for every possible outcome. There's multiple instances in Bitcoin's price history, even in our current bear cycle, where we've maybe had flashes that maybe a new bull cycle has begun before more downwards price action. So we need to prepare for the worst but hope for the best. Let me know what your thoughts are on the current Bitcoin price action, and if you think we may have already kicked off the next bull cycle, and if so, where and when do you think Bitcoin may top out in the next cycle? Might be something we have to cover in a future video. But if you like this video, then please visit lookintobitcoin.com, where you can also consider becoming a site subscriber to gain access to live chats, in-depth newsletters, indicator alerts, private trading view scripts, and more, all for a fraction of the standard industry price. I know I read my Look Into Bitcoin newsletter this morning, and it did give me a little bit of inspiration for this video. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.